Ladies and gentlemen, guess what, boys and girls? It's that time of week. It's time for Cameron Flask. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Fun show ahead of us. We're going to address lots of chat action this evening. But first and foremost, Jem.
Yes, sir. What? I'm well. How are you?
Good. I got my yawn out before the show, so I'm feeling better.
You got your what?
And then my yawn out. You know,
good.
Get them out of there. And then Ben with some lovely RGB background, some handsome glasses.
Yeah.
How you doing, brother?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Good. So I say we get this party started. Our topic today is going to be gear fads, and we're going to get into that here in a little bit. We're going to quickly get through what beverages we're sipping on. Please let us know what you are as well. Lots of people in the chat, or at least two gentlemen talking a lot. You know who you are.
They are.
Welcome, Bad Karma, Shiznuts. Bart, what's going on, brother? If you're still here. Joseph. Scrolling down past 2 or 3 people talking about Casey. Tony. And I see Daniel in there somewhere. Welcome, everybody. So
we got Kim, Sam, and Andres, and Leo. So we've got a bunch of others, too.
Welcome, everybody.
Very good.
So let us, this is just before we jump in, if you're new here, we do this every single Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then a bunch of other times that I can never remember. So you can do math. But we want this to be very interactive. So as we go through this, we're going to be going through kind of different eras in time and talking about gear fads. We'll talk about what stuck around, what completely died off, and bring some interesting, history, which a lot of us, I think, is going to bring back some memories. I'm excited about this one. So before we do that, let's go ahead and jump into what are we drinking. And I'm going to start with Captain Pink.
Okay, so I think this might be the second time we've had this on the show. I can't remember. This is from a brewery just up the road. Now, I don't know. I'm going to see if you can actually see if we can see this. But this has kind of sediment in the bottom of it. This is a completely live natural beer. So you need to kind of turn this upside down, give it a little wiggle around to get the...
Keep it down, Shiznuts and 360 grad. Keep it to yourself, okay? Go ahead.
Get the yeasty stuff moving, and I'm just going to put a little one of these this evening.
I thought that's what I was thinking, Shiznuts. He should have a saber to open this thing. A sword.
So there we go. Grolsch bottle, top Grolsch style. Ready? Here we go.
That was no Fuji. That was no Fujifilm autofocus. That was definitely a Canon autofocus.
Oh yeah, wasn't it just?
It was very nice. It was very smooth. I saw that. That was very nice.
Yeah. Okay, so that's me. That's what I'm drinking. It's beer from Ricknoff.
Nice. So you're rocking the beers, man.
Yeah, you're pretty consistent, right?
That beer for like 5.
I live in the beer capital of the world, so you got it.
All right, Jem, what do we got?
All right. It's summertime, boys. So things are happening over here, and we're taking the trip down south of the border. I had a hard time getting over the wall, but I made it. And I hung out with my buddy Clooney, and I'm having a brand new bottle of Casamigos Añejo tequila. This is the stuff. I mean, Blanco, the Reposado, every single one of the trio is amazing. We were making Mexican mojitos with the Reposado version of this. But I decided, actually, I'm going to try it neat first. But I have some ice here. I have very summery. I've got a little lime. And I'm just going to be sipping. I'm going to be sipping on this. So it's the Casamigos Añejo tequila. We'll talk more about that later on. And I'm going to have a little bit in my glass, and I'm excited. And what about you, Mr. Caleb Pike?
Yeah. So today we've had this before. I've had this before.
I wish I had a fanfare.
Right. I know. Yeah. Right. Real quick. Fuji focus issue. Actually, that's not too bad.
No.
Where's the thing? Where's the? How do I get it to do the gem? Does
You
gem?
go like this. You go like this. You move out of the way, and you
I don't
kind
want
of
to
wait out.
There it goes. I forgot to hit record, so I'm going to do that.
I'm gonna go do mine too. Hold on. Keep
Pro
talking.
tip. I'll keep talking. Pro tip: if you have a Fuji camera, I talk about this in my guide. So here's a little free tip. The autofocus sucks unless you're recording. So if you're live streaming or want good autofocus the rest of the time, set the camera to release or record without the SD card. And then when you press the shutter and act like it's recording, the autofocus gets like incredibly good. So random thing. So here we go. This week, one of my favorites.
All right, bullet rye.
Bullet rye. I know I've been real boring with a lot of these, but you know, there's only so much exploration I can do with a certain amount of money at once.
What's up, Sky? Guys watching from the London Underground.
Ooh, fun.
Possibly depressed or happy about
let's not even get started on that ridiculous unbelievable situation.
We live in ridiculous land over here, so whatever. Welcome to the club.
There you
Donald's
go.
mini-me. Anyway, yeah, let's move on from it.
And on that note, gentlemen and everybody who's watching, thank you so much for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's
Cheers.
get the show started.
Oh, that is super smooth. That is an exceptional tequila, and very happy to be having it on this summer day.
Perfect. So
great.
Here's the deal. I would love to know if any of these fads you guys have fallen into as we get into today's topic. I know we all, for a decent amount of this, have.
Every single
one.
We're
going to go, we could go infinitely back, but we're going to start around the year 2009-ish, potentially 2000 to 2005, depending on when this started. And our first gear fad is going to be 35mm adapters.
Yes.
Show of hands in the chat. Who remembers when like this was the bee's knees? You were the stuff when you had a Letus, what is it, Elite or Extreme or something? 35mm adapter.
Yeah.
So gear fad number one. What do you guys think? Obviously, it was an exciting time. Had some serious drawbacks, but if you wanted that shallow depth of field, I guess you could lump this in with shallow depth of field, which will kind of be a theme.
Yep.
Going forward. What do you think? Do you guys use them? Did you use them?
So I haven't, but it was a kind of revelation when a guy that I was shooting with one day, who's one of the world's best climbers. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that episode of Top Gear where they race the climber against Jeremy Clarkson in the Audi, and then he skydives. He just base jumps off the top of the cliff he's just climbed, and they race back down. No? Anyway.
I have every episode of Top Gear, man. It's my life.
So, all right. So that guy is my friend Leo, and we were working together on a job, and I was photographing him, and he'd just come back from this incredible expedition to Asgard, which is in the very north of Canada, Baffin Island, I think. And they'd shot this entire thing with a Letus adapter with a guy called Alistair Lee, who shot loads of amazing climbing films. And it was the first thing, and this is like a multi-day, multi-pitch climb. I think they were on there for more than a week, living on portaledges. So they had to take all the batteries. They had one hard drive that they were backing stuff up to when they were going. This is like 2008, I guess. And he decided that he was going to take the Letus adapter to give it that look. And the finished film is called The Asgard Project, and it just blew me away. So it was kind of a revelation. So although I didn't use one at the time, it was something that was massively impressive to me. And I guess we should kind of explain what these things are, because I guess we're looking far enough back here that people might not know what we're talking about.
Sure. I mean,
do you want to talk through what this thing is?
Yeah. So basically, 35mm lens adapter is a device that is designed to take a small chip camera system, and the 3 chip sizes that we were using most commonly were 1/3 inch, which is pretty much all the Panasonic cameras that were out there. 1/2 inch, which is when you started to get into especially into HD, the EX1, EX3 from Sony were all 1/2 inch sensors. And then you also had 2/3 inch sensors, but those were primarily reserved for larger ENG, shoulder mounted electronic field production, electronic news production type things. So I'd say that the vast majority of people were using 1/3 and 1/2 inch sensor camera systems. And the frustration was that when cameras like the DVX 100 came out, which introduced 24 frames per second into a mini DV video camera, you still had the limitation of having an extremely small sensor inside of the camera. So from a selective focus, which means being able to choose in a relatively small space your shallow depth of field or your deep depth of field, you didn't have a lot of options. You basically had a lens that had an equivalent range of a lot in terms of wide to tight. But the reality is the lens was about an 8 or 9 millimeter to about an 80 millimeter focal length. So the shallowest depth of field you could get out of there was about an 80 millimeter depth of field. And so what you would do is you would take this device, and there were different form factors of it. The first one I think we used on a production was from a company called Movie Tube. Then you had the Letus adapters, you had Red Rock Micro. And what you'd do is you would stick this thing in front of the fixed lens, generally, of a camera system, a DVX 100, an EX1, whatever it's going to be. And then there was usually a mirror, and then there was a piece of ground glass or composite like plastic. And what would happen is that would essentially vibrate so that you wouldn't be able to see the ground glass. And then what you would do is you would focus your lens, fixed lens from your camera on this piece of ground glass. And then you would basically be filming what the ground glass's field of view and characteristics were, which would give you essentially the equivalent of a selective focus camera. Because guess what's sitting in front of the 35 millimeter lens adapter? A film lens. So you're putting a 50 millimeter lens on there, a 35 millimeter lens, and generally we're putting full frame lenses on there. The ground glass has got a much bigger area, so it acts like a large sensor. So we're starting to get the depth of field that we would get out of those things. So it was a huge revelation, especially for people who are on small sensor cameras. The biggest downside, besides the fact that they were clunky as all heck and you needed to power them with a battery system, is they lost a tremendous amount of light. So you would the cameras were I'm going to say it, they were shitty to begin with in terms of light gathering, because what would they rated at, like a 160 to 320 ISO as a base ISO at best on those cameras. And then you're dropping it by a stop to 2 stops with the adapter. So it was a real challenge. You had to feed these things a lot of light, but they had a very organic look. And you put on an old Nikon or Nikkor lens on there, and you had magic. You had some magic that was starting to happen. So there's my explanation. There you go.
Yeah. And the other thing to note with those, they used to have to draw power as well, because this vibration thing with the mirror. But also there were all kinds of different methods. There were some that used to spin, I think, as well. One of the adapters had to spin.
Some shake and some spin.
Yeah. So they're a whole world of pain. And you imagine taking that up a cliff face for 7 days. I mean, the dedication to doing it. But I do recommend going to see that film or digging it out from somewhere. The Asgard project. It's just outstandingly good, given the time as well. Because now there's all kinds of kind of very slick looking climbing films. But at the time, you were really limited to what you could carry with you. So it was all compromised. And this was the first one that it was a properly cinematic production, not just the way that it looked, the way they went about filming it, the way they put the story together. It's phenomenal. Really worth seeing.
Nice. So so we had that. There are multiple companies that made them, and then I guess we're kind of loose on the term fad with that one. Because to me, and we can define fad very quickly, but something that is insane, everyone was into it, popular, but necessarily didn't stick around. And the reason for that on this one was, we got larger sensors eventually, so we got
the 5D.
We got the 5D Mark II is the reason. That's the real reason that they went away, for sure.
So let's go ahead and kind of get into, do you just want to go straight to large sensor DSLRs? Or do you want to do depth of field?
Wait, what is David saying? David is saying, Jem, you need some Life Boy for that mouth? Oh, Life. What does that mean?
Life Boy.
Does that mean like a bar of soap? What are you talking about, David?
I don't know. Your teeth are immaculate.
No, I think he's talking. They're not immaculate. I think he's talking about the fact that I had a potty mouth a couple of minutes ago, and he's making a comment about that. All right, I'll go see scope. That's what I thought. Okay.
Is it some like, I don't know.
David,
I have no idea what that is.
So
I never use bad language in real life. Back to Caleb.
Wow.
Like he doesn't drink in real life either.
Yep, that's true. Only for the show. All right. So let's
notice that mine's a full bottle, by the way. Okay, go ahead. I'm ready.
Animated like timeline. Just imagine it. 2009. We had the big honking 35 millimeter adapters. Now we're gonna move up and let's just jump into. Let's just do it. 5D large sensor.
Yep.
It technically starts with Nikon, I believe. Right.
Yes, it does,
D90. D90 720p. Oh my goodness! Look at that shallow depth of field. Then Canon's like, well, that's cute, but here's the 5D. 1080p accident for, essentially journalists who are out taking photos. Why not be able to shoot some video? And then the film industry just blew up. They're making movies with this thing. And I would say the big fad with that isn't necessarily large sensor, because we've been wanting that forever, but it was just maybe, I don't know, is misuse the improper term, or just shallow depth of field. Everyone went from shooting small sensor or 35 millimeter adapters to f1.2 all the time, every shot.
Right.
Is that accurate?
I think so. I mean, I think that I have a lot of feelings about this, and I don't want to rehash the history of the 5D Mark II and DSLRs. I think most people know the whole Vincent LaFerré story and everything else that happened that followed that. I do think that, at least in terms of my own journey, one of the things that happened was I grew up in a house with photography. I got a Pentax K1000 when I was a kid. I went out and I took photographs. I had a darkroom in our kitchen. I would, work with my dad in the darkroom, and I learned that process, but I never honestly understood how the triangle really worked when I was a little kid. And then, like, to really control how I was capturing images on my camera system. And then this whole path led me to video production, and I started to use a variety of video cameras, which of course all had much smaller sensors in them. And when the 5D Mark II came out, I basically relearned photography. And for me, I was also a teacher at the time. One of the things that I was really trying to learn was, how am I going to use this tool in a video environment? I don't come from a cinematographer's background. I wasn't shooting on super 35 millimeter cinema cameras. I was shooting on 1/3 inch to at most 2/3 inch video cameras, and then had made the transition to 35 millimeter lens adapters and understood how those worked. But I really wasn't still putting all of those pieces together. And we were still using gain in our camera systems, not ISO. And it was just, it was a big, big learning process for me. And I think it was for a lot of other people, because here you were with a tool that could shoot video, initially at 30, and then they put 24p in there. First job we ever shot for a client was actually at 30, but because we moved the camera slowly and we had sliver thin depth of field, and I did actually have a great DP who knew how to use the camera, it felt very cinematic anyway. And then it was just sort of like an added when we got 24. But I think that a lot of that was people like being excited, but also learning to use the cameras. I know that a lot of my workshops were helping people transition from video to using these DSLR cameras. And it was a big thing. And part of that fad was just being so drawn to, and I think able to shoot things at a 1.4 and a 2 and a 2.8 and getting, those looks and feels. And also just struggling to no end to try to figure out how to hold focus. And that's why you get all of this stuff where you got this look where things are going in and out of focus constantly. And I think it's just like most of us was like, how the hell are we going to keep focus with these cameras? And we wanted to shoot wide open because we finally could with this shallow depth of field. So it was an interesting time.
Yeah, it was for sure. I think it was exciting because up until that point, I'd really been working in stills and dabbling in a bit of video, although that's what I'd trained in, but the world had moved on a long way by this point. And my thing with the depth of field was that I was just using whatever aperture I was to get exposure. So I was wide open indoors and I was stopped down to 22 as soon as you stepped out the door on a sunny day. So that was kind of my experience of it, and learning to be, or having to be carrying ND around, and that was a bit of a shock to the system and took a little bit of learning, I think.
The dark ages of like, there's one company that made a fader ND. Remember that?
Yeah.
Light,
I remember.
Light Workshop. What was it called? Light
Workshop. I
yeah,
thought.
it was
Something
the one.
Light Workshop.
And then like a year later, several other came out, and theirs was the worst, but it was the only one, I think.
I mean, I've always somehow gotten the camera. I'm not talking about like an Alexa, but like if I really want something, somehow I just figure out how to friggin' get it. But did you all have a 5D Mark II?
Yes.
I always wanted a DVX 100, and then I got a DVX 100A, I guess was the second version, and then they did the B. So I still have the A. But the 5D Mark II I had, and you had it, Caleb. Did you get a 5D Mark II?
I was too broke at the time. I got the 7D. I was saving every penny. I was about to buy a 35 millimeter adapter for my my HV30. Yep, 1080p colors look great. And and I couldn't afford an adapter. I was going to buy the Jag 35 one.
Yep.
Which, unlike the Letus, doesn't reverse it, because that's the other thing, is the Letus use mirrors.
It did flip.
Yeah.
So guys were using HV30s or 20s upside down with these ridiculous rigs. It was terrible. So you're like looking upside down to read the time code. So I couldn't afford that, and then the 5D came out, and I'm like, ooh, it looks so good, but I can't afford it. And then the 70 came out, and then I spent like everything I had in savings at the time, which, by the way, is the reason my channel exists. That camera and starting a WordPress site, and here we are, almost exactly 10 years later. And
crazy.
Bam. So I did eventually buy a 5D2, and when I first shot on one, it just broke my mind. Even coming from a 7D, something about full frame 35 millimeter sensors just amazing.
But would you also say, and by the way, shout out to the people who are bringing up the HV20, the other little engine that could. Oh, I love it. Those little cannons. I have to say that there is still something to this day about the 5D Mark II sensor that is whatever it is. And I'm not saying you can't get a great look out of a 5D Mark III or a 5D Mark IV or other full frame DSLRs, but we do talk about sensors quite a bit and how a sensor can have an impact in what your image is. And I think it was not just the fact that it was 35 millimeter full frame. There was a kind of magic to that 5D Mark II sensor that to me is also inherently part of what the attraction was to that look. That's me. Maybe it's just all pie in the sky. And
well, no, I think there's something to that, because a good friend of mine who's an amazing stills photographer, does a lot of weddings, and he still maintained, he had ones and the Mark 1 and the Mark II, and he had EOS ones right through as well. And he always maintained that the 5D Mark I was the most pleasing color of any of those cameras.
Interesting.
He was still using that in preference to the later models of that same camera that he bought. So there is something about that.
Now we talk about that. So yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
Little sidetrack, and then we'll get back on the main track. Wouldn't it be incredible if someday we get to the point where sensors, camera sensors, get a little more like computers. And if there was such a thing as like a socket, just like you can on a PC at least swap out CPUs, wouldn't that be amazing to be able to like buy a used 5D2 sensor and be able to like click it into into a body?
That would be cool.
Anyway,
I would.
That's like reddish stuff. Like Red sort of does upgrades, but you can't use or do it. But anyway, random thought of how dope that would be.
Well, you know how you buy video game consoles now that are like old school classic video game consoles, and they have all of the games from the last, 25,
right.
30 years at this point. How cool would it be if you had a camera body and somebody figured out the color science enough so that you could go in there and say, okay, I want to shoot with the 5D Mark II look, or I want to shoot with, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. It's going to happen at some point. Somebody's going to come up with crap like that.
It's like those Zoom do one. So I don't know if either of you are guitar players. I think you, Caleb, you play, don't you? So you can get that. So I'm terrible, but I like messing it. So that Zoom box that they do, the guitar amp emulator. So you can say, I want to sound like Jimi Hendrix did at Woodstock, and use that exact same cabinets, the same valve amps, the same effect pedals that he had. So I wonder if something like that will appear for sensors, and you can just dial in. Might want, as you say, something similar. Interesting.
Yeah. Or maybe it'll be we have LUTs now, right? So it'll be like you have a camera, and this is simulating the look and also the sensor or the depth of field characteristics of a particular film. So you dial that in, and you're like, okay, I want it to render color like Blade Runner 2049, or like, a Coen Brothers movie, or like Skyfall, whatever it's going to be. And then it dials in all the stuff. And as long as you're in a full frame sensor, at least, then it can simulate all of those things. Who knows?
Yeah. Eventually, it's all going to be on an iPhone, and you're going to be able to just buy the iFilmic Pro, 71, and you'll be able to be like, Alexa LF, just swipe through, and it's just like you pick a sensor or a film stock and then a lens, and then we'll all be out of jobs, or I'll have to come up with some other way to.
Still got to know how to light, brother. Still got to know how to record audio.
That's the thing.
Oh, by the way,
okay, we got to.
Wait. And don't you think that, of course, the next hydrogen camera that's just been teased is that camera? Because I'm sure that Red's doing that.
Yeah. Another.
Can we have a moment of silence ahead of time for that camera?
The hydrogen 2.
Okay, that was not a moment of silence. I was just going to have a moment of silence for the hydrogen 2 ahead of time, so we don't have to do it later on. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, that's good enough. Okay, here we go. Oh my God.
Also, side note, that whole like Red magazine fiasco.
Oh yeah,
those video series and everything.
Yeah.
Then he posted Jim posted like an Instagram photo of a camera with a CFAB. I'm pretty sure what he did is he walked down the hall after video number 2 came out with that guy with the weird accent who's like trashing Red. And he went into their graphic design where they have all their like animations of their cameras and stuff.
3D rendering.
Hey, can you just do like a close-up shot of something that looks like we made it? Put a random slot in it and write C fast and put a little LED light next to it.
Wait.
This afternoon. Make it happen.
Make sure it's a capital. Make sure it's a capital F, because people will know otherwise.
C fast. Yeah.
Oh, we're getting cheeky.
Just to calm everybody down. Anyway, we're gonna get back to fads. So, shallow depth of field. I mean, you can almost immediately tell when a video is made if you just randomly are watching videos on YouTube or wherever. If you see like f1.2 every single shot, and or the classic 5D to 7D up until the 70D or even the 80D, just the classic Canon 8-bit mush. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
all eye. Like whatever was used in those early cameras for compression, for processing, that in the codec was just rough.
It was.
Skin tones just kind of turn into the mush. You know what I'm talking about. You can spot those videos easily.
I made some of those videos.
I think we kicked that horse enough. Maybe we'll move on to some camera movement, shall we?
Well, I just want to acknowledge here. Loom is asking, "What's my overall opinion on Red?" And while we are bashing the hydrogen, and we are also making fun of the other, Red makes some pretty amazing camera systems. They're expensive, and we have seen many times the result. And they've done very well because of Netflix, because until recently, because of the Airy thing, they have been very much the camera of choice for most of the non-documentary style content. In fact, I just got finished watching Man in the High Castle, and that was all shot on Red. I think it looked great.
Very good series.
Yeah, beautiful series in terms of cinematography. So, in the hands of people who know what they're doing, and understand the whole workflow of it, and their color science has come, it's come a really long way. I think Red makes great products. And for the most part, they act like a camera company now, and they're kind of grown up, but eventually, every once in a while, like lately, they fall back into their old habits as they would.
Well, the Red Migs have always been like ridiculous. I would hope a lot of us would have thought, that it's just an SSD in a little fancy enclosure, which is sad. But yeah, I mean, you look at their back end, like their hardware or their software, how they did compression up until now when Blackmagic's got things sorted.
It was amazing,
incredible. I mean, Red 12:1.
Yeah,
it's amazing. All right, so we've covered the large sensor, or rather shallow depth of field fad. We all kind of graduated to like, okay, we get it. Shutter speed, set it to 180, get some ND on that thing. Maybe the fader because it looks terrible. One shot's like, oh my gosh, I'm Steven Spielberg. The next shot, it's like, what happened? Faders, that arrow where, just everyone used faders. No one used ND. And now let's get into some camera movement, perhaps. Specifically, let's see in the next little while, we can talk about the glide cam and the slider, the infamous slider.
Yes.
I mean, how many hours did I spend researching sliders, looking at those Chinese ones where it's just like nylon dragged across aluminum? And let's start with glide cam. Did either of you get into that? I bought a Chinese knockoff. Was like, whoa, look at me, and never got it fully balanced. It was always just kind of like this.
I don't think I ever used it on a job, because if clients somewhere near and you're spending like half the day's time just trying to balance that thing, and it's just like I could never get it slick enough, the setup, to actually take it on jobs. I didn't have it very long.
Yeah.
So
Jem?
I was writing for a magazine called Studio Daily a long time ago, and a company, GlideCam, came out with something called the Smooth Shooter, and I had a DVX 100, and what they basically did is they made the first affordable arm and vest for a Steadicam style rig that was out there on the market. So at the time, I think it was coming in at $2,500 US for the whole setup, which was incredible at the time, that you could spend $2,500 for the sled, the arm, and the vest to put together an entire system. They still sell that. And what I did was, GlideCam is based, they're in wherever they are. I think they're in Rhode Island or something, whatever. So I drove all the way up through the state of Connecticut, and I arrived at GlideCam, and it was basically on like a blizzard warning day. And Tom at GlideCam spent the entire day teaching me how to use the whole system. And then I took the system back and I started to use it on productions. And I shot with that whole smooth shooter rig for a long time. And it's based on the GlideCam and then having that whole thing. And I still have it. I don't shoot with it, but I thought it was pretty amazing because it was really the first affordable Steadicam rig that was really designed for mini DV cameras. So I thought that it was amazing.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the tech is, legit. It's just like everyone's like, "Ugh," and the Chinese ones, I think especially. I've never used a legit GlideCam because that's the company's name, right? GlideCam.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
I just used the Chinese stuff and that never panned out. It smelled weird, was oily, and it just never worked.
Didn't smell as much as that Cowboy Studio thing. The one that
man,
the little shoulder rig.
That was one every in a YouTube /blogger's career. There's milestones.
Yeah.
That video was one of my little $20 plastic chiropractic nightmare. We're putting all the weight in. It's like torquing your shoulder in this weird way.
Did you own one of those, Ben?
No.
You know what I'm talking about? The one that had like the rubber and it would like wrap around your back and here, and you'd have the camera in totally the wrong position, but it was kind of right.
Yes, I know the product you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. It was sharp. What is it called again? I even forgot.
It wasn't Cowboy Studio. It was somebody else, or maybe it was.
Eventually, it was Cowboy. It was some Chinese. Yeah, that thing, man. Oh man, you want to see a terrible video? Google that thing. Whatever that's called. You'll find my video, me with a beard, which was fantastic, if I do say so.
But
I'm standing outside. It's focused on the trees behind me, and it was shot on the HV30 because I didn't have another camera. So I had my 7D in the shot, so I had to shoot it on my HV30. That's terrible. It's really bad.
We have to find that.
If you just Google like $20 video camera rig, you'll probably find it.
I was looking up for a Cowboy Caleb HV30 and I found Cowboy Caleb, but I don't think that's you. So there you go. All right.
Yeah, here it is. I just Googled $20 camera rig video and it's DSLR episode 10, $20 camera rig for HDSLR use.
Oh my God.
I only got 50,000, but it was one of my, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to watch this later.
I can't wait.
The Moray, I'm wearing a shirt with tight lines. Moray is out of control. At any rate, little fun piece of information for folks.
Okay, so what we have to do in a future episode, by the way. Oh, I see it. Episode 10.
There it is.
Wait, you have it. Oh, look at you. You are
so much air.
Put the link in the chat.
Amazing. Oh, okay. I love this. Here we go. Okay, bingo. So I'm going to actually bookmark this now. This is amazing. There it is. I love that thing. Oh, it's so good. You're so smart. Even back then, like you're so smart about everything you did. Okay, well, I feel whatever. Go ahead. We're ready.
Apparently, I apologize for my connection. I'm watching the stream in the background, and it's terrible.
You're a little chunky today.
Yeah.
I don't mean like that. I mean just compressed.
Oh, it's that too, but it might be a Google Drive. I'm trying to upload 3 terabytes, so we're gonna see.
Oh, that might be it. There you go.
Yeah. Right. So very distracted there. Let's get back to the task at hand. So we talked about GlideCam a little bit. Any other points there before we move on to the big one? The number one fad, I would say, of potentially the decade at the 2010. You ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sliders, boys and girls.
Mm.
Or maybe the 2012, 13, I feel like is when it peaked, right?
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Sliders.
And the glory days of NAB too. And maybe next time we're going to talk about shoulder rigs because this all was happening at the same time. But what do you got to say about these sliders, Mr. Ben Barden?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Ben on this one.
All right. So my first one, I built myself.
Ooh.
And well, it was not really a slide. It was more of a dolly that I made out of UPVC pipe And because I wanted to use it with a tripod on it, so I got a big piece of wood, and then got the 90-degree bits of angle aluminium, and then skateboard wheels, and making with all the bearings from the skateboard wheels in, and it was amazing. The quality of the moves on that thing were great, and I used to use it in hotels. So because you could buy that pipe for nothing, and I can't remember what I used to use to join them. Some dowel, or some wooden dowel. I think I figured out some way of getting a reasonably smooth join, and I could do these huge runs through corridors, and it was great. It was just a pain to set up, and it looked terrible. You had to really know the client, and it wasn't something you could use in a first job with them because it just looked so janky. It was terrible, but the results of it were fantastic. So that was the first one I had, and then I bought a series of terrible, cheap Chinese ones, not learning from the previous mistake each and every time. And those were the ones, the ones that had they weren't on sort of bearinged wheels. They were on like a bush.
Nylon sliders.
Yes. And it was the piece of metal that they used to slide on. It must have been some kind of building material or some engineering material that you could just buy off the shelf somewhere, because they were all absolutely identical with just a different anodizing on them. That was all they were.
Aluminum extrusion is just random. And then they made these little like nylon plastic pieces, and then you try to get kind of oil to make sure they're.
That's it. You had to WD-40 them. Like between every single move, you used to have to douse it in WD-40. Oh, we lost Caleb. He's gone.
Oh, I'm here. Oh,
you're here. Just video's gone.
Okay. Well, we'll have to address that. But carry on.
But yeah, that's the things we're talking about. That you would just have to continually spray them with oil, which then would get on your hands, and then you'd have all that over your camera. Yeah, they were a disaster.
Well, I'm going to address the battery issue that I'm embarrassingly having. I'm in between videos, so things are a little rough on the batteries and charger front. I'll get that sorted. Jem, I want you to dive in. I want you to talk about the peak of sliders. I mean, your history as well, but the whole Kessler thing, just like sliders everywhere. Sliders are the best. Every shot's a slider. Who needs tripods? Carry on.
I mean, it was definitely a gear lust thing, and it continues and has with gimbals and everything else that we have. We clearly know that there are still sliders out there on the market, and plenty of companies making them, including Kessler, that makes great sliders. But to me, the fad was sort of how we were using sliders. It wasn't that some people were using especially longer sliders or dollies for traditional filmmaking shots. To me, the fad was the parallax move. It was the idea that we were moving towards not just one, but two camera shoots. And what we were going to do with either our A or our B camera, we'll just put that thing on a freaking slider and we'll parallax that thing. And so everything became a parallax move. Every product shot became a parallax shot, and either you had a mechanical parallax solution like Kessler has for their Cine slider, which I liked very much, or you started to get into lots of batteries and wires, and you started to get into what you really need, which is you need to have at least the actual slide movement itself with some sort of motor system, and then you have to have at least one axis for your pan. And so you would get into seeing that parallax move. And to me, I think it's the parallax that was the fad. And we still see it, but I really associated that with those times, which was probably around 2014 or so, whenever that was. And that was really the peak. And now I think that people are still using it, but I tend to lean away from using that parallax move for a lot of things. I love parallax shots. And if I'm going to get a drone up in the sky, I'm going to do a long lens parallax shot, and it looks great. It throws that whole background out. You get this really dynamic look and feel. I love long lens shooting, for feature films and things like that. But I think that it's how you're using the product more so than anything else. Because let's look at something like a Dana dolly. and the shuttle dolly from Kessler, both fantastic tools, primarily being used in more traditional filmmaking ways when you're doing pushes and you're doing tracking shots, you know, and things like that. So to me, that's the fad.
Yeah.
You're back, Caleb.
I am.
Ish.
Thank you for having me.
3 terabytes of uploads for your new whatever it is you're
Still,
uploading.
does it still look terrible?
No, it looks all right now.
I just I don't know what you're uploading, but I hope it's a new camera guide or something. I'm excited.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So sliders, yeah. I would
Yeah.
agree. A lot of these fads, it was the overuse. There's a period of time where that was what everyone was, you know, into. Oh, Kim, we gotta address some stuff here in the chat.
Yeah, let's go.
So first and foremost, that could be a whole fad in and of itself. People building ridiculous stuff.
Yes.
Just like Ben, I built a Dana Dolly knockoff. Just the PVC rigs in the day. And then Kim with the Cinovate. I'm gonna Google right now. Who remembers?
Of course. Oh, I not only know. Yes, I remember them, and I knew them.
Guy, bald beard. Love that guy.
Oh, he's great. I've met him.
They're still here.
In what's the name of something? They're in Canada.
Yep.
It's a great name for that town. What's the name of the town they're in? I don't know. Dennis. It's Dennis from Cinovate.
Dennis from
and it's Thunder Mountain. Thunder Mountain,
Thunder Mountain. Welcome.
Thunder Mountain, baby. Just understand, my hands did not touch the keyboard. That all came from this little noggin here. The Casamigos made me remember. Go ahead.
Amazing. That's really impressive. So if we go to their products right now, they used to make all kinds of stuff: sliders, motion control jibs, and rigs is where they're at right now. But they had some great products.
Yes.
I just feel like they were always just behind. And someone else here in the chat, where is it? Someone nailed it. I want to get this right because it was a brilliant comment. Isn't here we go. Bart, dude, you got it done. Isn't Red Rock Micro's product lineup pretty much the museum of filmmaking? Don't tell them I said that.
Come on.
Oof. I would say that's you know, fairly accurate. For some things, yeah. And
but the fact that you're saying that, Bart, means that Red Rock made a huge contribution in their own way, and they made some great products. And they weren't always copycat products. They definitely, they definitely created some of their own stuff that I think. And then they made other stuff that other people were making, and they improved upon it, as did everybody else. It was sort of a back and forth game. And then you had Jag 35, like just kind of providing stuff to people who could afford it. You know,
it was Zacuto for a period of time. It was Zacuto, Red Rock, 35. That was your life.
And Kessler, you said Kessler, right?
Well, yeah, but for like rigs, which we'll get into in our part 2 probably.
Yeah.
And Red Rock, like their follow focus system, their wireless one, for a period of time was the one.
Totally.
It was where you went. Actually, my red buddy, air quotes, who if we want to have him on the show, I talked to him about it. He's down.
Yeah.
He's just about to, for the first time, switch from that Red Rock wireless follow focus system.
Yeah.
Something else, because they announced a part 2 or an update, but they never came out with it.
That's right.
So
I remember that.
As we enter the final 10 minutes, anything else you gentlemen would like to add? Tom Lowe's Timescapes movie was peak for the Kessler slider. I bought that back in the day to support him. That
Timescapes movie was amazing.
Timescapes movie, incredible. I did pre-order the recent Arc from Rhino.
Yeah. The small one? Did you get like the small track or the longer one, or what'd you do?
I can't remember. I honestly can't. I'll have to look it up. But that one feels like, easy to use, motion control. I have the Shark Mini from iFootage, but it's just not quite it's like A6500 only. But anyway, a lot of these fads, like we talked about, overuse, but some are just straight up. I would say.
That's the majority of it is just overuse of all of these things. David asking, are jibs cool? Well, in moderation, yes. And there was again another period where there was an explosion in those. Yep. I think, I don't know, from my own experience with them, I bought one, got some great shots with it, and then found it just an utter pain in the ass to use on jobs because it took so long to set up. It needed counterweight, or there was just a lot of stuff. And if you didn't have crew with you, then it was just not that practical.
Yeah.
You're saying it right there, Ben. The whole thing was we're being sold on filmmaking tools for small to no crew production. But the reality is, like, the first product they ever really bought as an extension beyond a tripod and stuff was the original Kessler crane. The original Kessler crane, before they made all of the other stuff. And just like that smooth shooter from GlideCam, I literally looked for like days for a crane that I could afford, a jib. And they were the only people who made something out of Indiana that I could order and actually get that. And we needed it for a job. And it was cheaper to buy it and then invest in it, like I did once for a teleprompter system that I also found is like the only inexpensive version. But to rent it would have been more expensive than to buy into the system. So, but the problem was that you really needed a crew of people. So as soon as that job was done, where I didn't have the 8 people who were on the job, and I'm sitting there with this, giant case, and I want to set it up to shoot a video with, I was like, that's a pain in the ass. I'm not going to do that until we started to get those pocket jibs, and those were interesting. But again, you use them for a little while, and you're like, I'm just sick of dealing with this.
Which is, I know we're going to go into this more, I guess, in part 2 of this, but that is also the same where I am with gimbals a lot of the time.
Shh! Don't spoil it.
Sorry.
I have.
Part two, we've got some fun stuff planned.
There's so much stuff to talk about.
There's gonna be a lot more. Oh man, and I've been, as we've been watching, I've been thinking about a couple. So I figured in this final 7 minutes, let's jump into the chit chats, the chit chat segment. Yeah. I feel like we should start a segment, a new one, where we just talk about. I don't know. I'm getting
last 15 minutes. You mean like last 15 minutes, maybe?
Last 7 minutes, or right now 7, but 15.
Right. Okay. I have a question for both of you. I know Jem and I talked about it. Did either of you, in the end, order the Peak Design tripod?
Nope.
The Kickstarter.
Nope.
Okay.
Though I do have a Ronin FC in the house. Which is
fun. I thought about it, Ben, just because I think it'd be fun to do a no budget ultimate travel kit. Like, forget about money. What's the smallest, best setup? And that tripod would clearly be a solution. But I mean, come on, what is it? $500-600?
Yeah.
For the carbon one, the aluminium ones are much more affordable. It's $3 something. I find it really interesting. I just was thinking about the practical use of it is to extending the legs and then having because how many extensions was it 4 or 5? And having that clip to go down and do on each, it's a lot of setup. If you have that with that size, but with the button on the top to just go,
yep.
Then I would pay a lot of money for that. I think it's still interesting, and I still may get one, but I need to hear hands-on reviews and just see how it fares. But it's a really good looking product. It's interesting, and I like that head thing as well. The head's clever.
Yeah, very interesting. So definitely, guys, in the comments, let us know what you want to chat about. Maybe we'll call this, I don't know what we'll call this, if this will even be a thing, but open mic right now. Larry says gossip segment. In a way, and not quite gossip, but just talking about,
I feel like you're the English. Your quality of picture today, Caleb, is like English, England Lake District Ben today. It's like you've been transported to his mom's house, and you're from there with your I don't. We got to work this out.
Well, there'll be a nostalgia to that because my mum's, they've got some community fiber broadband project that's going around all the villages around there, and they're getting it in the next couple of months. And she's going to have a 900 meg connection, synchronous, directly into the house. So it's going to be amazing. We've lost him again.
No, okay, so here we go. He's mad because I said that. I didn't mean that personally. Okay, so a couple of things. Sky London 300D2 Amazeballs said it in the comments. I think they've ticked all the boxes there except for bicolor, which was what I want. But fanless, the lightning connector, basically one box. It's basically silent, huge output. I think they've really done a number on that 300D2. I'm excited about it. A7, R Mark IV. I think we're, from a video standpoint, we're disappointed, I would say, for the three of us, in the sense that we know the A7S Mark III is going to be whatever they're going to come out with from a video perspective. There's nothing that would compel somebody to go from, and Caleb can chime in on this, especially because you have an A7 III and I've shot with it. I don't think there's anything that would compel you to buy an A7R IV for video applications if you own an A7 III from Sony. Correct, Caleb?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just wait.
Yeah.
Or buy non-Sony because 8-bit sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I've heard from relatively reliable sources that whatever Sony does do in the evolution for the A7S series is going to be pretty special. We'll see.
I think they're gonna.
It would have to be
skip the traditional A7S $3,500, and they're just gonna go compete with the S1H.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree.
Well, and their A7 III, and then yeah.
You think they'll go 8K, Caleb?
I don't know. I mean, if it's 8-bit at
200 megabits per second,
then sure, why not?
Well, they can do that. To me, it's so much more important that they make a 4K camera that is 10-bit with a high data than anything else.
Absolutely.
But we'll see. What do you think about drone shots? Are those a fad? Will they fad out? Will they stay a fad? Any feeling on that, Caleb? Drones?
I feel like we'll talk about that in the next part 2, but I would say it's going to potentially calm down, if anything, because of legal ramifications.
Well,
absolutely.
You can't even shoot it with them, basically.
Yeah. Feel free to switch the camera because I'm checking my connection here and it's gold, but YouTube, I'm watching it and it's bad, man.
Why is that?
I don't know. Really
this
I
is a
stopped
general
the upload, but it's on another machine that's out of arm's reach. So
got it. So what about Nicholas says, have you ever used a Tiffin variable ND? Is it worth it new for $50? But never used. Any feelings? I mean, I've used them, but anybody?
I have. That's my fader of choice right now.
Me too.
Unless you're gonna spend big money for what's the big hipster one right now with the gold.
Oh yeah,
Polar Pro.
Yeah,
I've not seen this.
Polar Pro aside, Tiffin is good. So
I have Tiffin 67 and 77. Yeah,
$50 is a steal. Get it.
Yeah, if you have to do a fader, otherwise, right? I just recently spent more than I've ever spent for NDs, and that's for Breakpoint, and super happy with them. Amazing, just for ND though.
Okay, but that's a variable, or is that a fixed ND?
Fixed ND. I got 2 or 3 strengths.
Okay,
I'm done with the fader thing.
Did you get 4x4s, or did you get screw-ins, or
round 77? Just that and those magnetic adapters, And
I will say this. I mean, I think that it's important to say, based on my experience, if you're buying one fixed ND filter for outdoor, I have found that the sweet spot, it's not going to get you always there where you need it to be, but a 1.2 or a 4-stop ND is kind of the magic number for outdoor stuff when you need to still have a relatively shallow depth of field and you want to make sure that you can, control that outside. So I find that anytime that I'm buying an ND that's a fixed ND, it's usually a 1.2. You could always go up to a 1.8 if you need more in terms of stops. But that seems to be for me the sweet spot. Anybody else?
I agree with that for one, and just from shooting on drones a lot, that's what we tend to be just stick on as a default.
Yeah,
and that does us most of the time.
Pitter patter, little feet above Mr. Caleb Pike. Is that what I hear?
not this week, actually.
What does that mean?
Construction on the house, so the kids and my lovely bride decided to take off for the weekend. So just me.
Oh, let's have another drink then. No, I'm just kidding.
It's mine tonight. They've just come back from swimming at midnight.
What?
Ooh.
The pool. Yeah, in the swimming pool in the city just down the road, they open up when we have a heat wave, and they open till midnight.
Brilliant.
So everyone can cool down in the evening. It's great. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Caleb, you're a great, fearless captain and leader. Take us out.
But I'll take fearless.
Hey, we don't know what's happening. Trust me,
No
the
idea.
whole interwebs today. It took me like 7 times rebooting my Wi-Fi hotspot to even get connected to the internet. So,
Oh man.
Yeah, I know it's bad.
Well, I just gotta say, folks, thank you for joining us this evening. If you're new, subscribe. There's a little ding-a-ling bell there in the corner, bottom right. If you want to slap that, as the kids say, or whatever. Every single week, you'll get a little email saying, "Hey, Cameron Flask, it's happening right now." Really appreciate it, guys. Great conversations. Can't wait for part 2.
Yep.
And Jem.
Thanks for being here at the channel. Thanks for coming every week. For the people who are the regulars, we are missing the Grumpy Penguin. So if you find the Grumpy Penguin somewhere, tell the Grumpy Penguin to come back to Cameron Flask. And we enjoy having everybody here. Love having my friends and chatting and having a drink. And it's nice to have one this week after having water with lime last week. And you guys are awesome, both in the chat and my buddies here. And Ben, what you got for us?
Just always enjoy this middle week drink. It feels like going to the pub always. So thanks for everyone in the chat and for you guys for getting involved. It's always good fun. And I look forward to doing it all again with you next week.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, Caleb.
Good, folks. Appreciate it. Appreciate y'all. Love everybody in the chat. Have a great rest of your week. And we will see you same time Wednesday next week. Have a good night, guys.